네, 방송작가 마스터클래스 2부 시작하겠습니다. 굉장히 긴 시간이었지만 여러분께서 집중력 있게 참여해 주셔서 참 진행하는 입장에서 참 수월했었는데요. 2부도 여러분의 많은 참여 그리고 관심 부탁드립니다. 자, 오늘 주제는 성공하는 이야기의 공식이었습니다. 그런데 1부에서 군이가 오르시께서 공식을 깨야 된다. 공식이 없는 것이 공식이다. 뭐 이런 얘기를 해주셔서 굉장히 신선하기도 했고 충격적이기도 했는데요. 이제 2부에서 만나볼 2부는 성공하는 이야기를 어떻게 말씀하실지 궁금합니다. BBC에서 셜록 홈즈의 이야기로 전 세계인들을 이목을 집중시킨 스티븐 모펫, 오늘 2부의 주인공인데요. 먼저 영상으로 만나보겠습니다.
Who are you?
Jim Moriarty.
Consulting criminal.
I have loved this little game of ours. I would try to convince you, but everything I have to say has already crossed your mind.
Probably my answers crossed yours.
The name's Sherlock Holmes and the address is 221B Baker Street.
Who are you? What do you do?
I'm a consulting detective.
What does that mean?
It means when the police are out of their depth, they consult me.
Boys! You've got another one!
You're rather good. When I read their scripts, I just could see that they'd been done with a real fanboy reverence and just a love, really. A love for the original stories.
I remember very, very clearly the first time I read Sherlock Holmes. We sort of are constantly wanting to say, have you any idea how good this is? How good Doyle is, how good these characters are.
Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
It's about the two of them. The whole way this show is written, shot, everything is about the two of them.
What the hell have you done?
Deal the devil.
They had immediate chemistry, and Steve led her to me and said, there's the show.
This is a matter of national importance. Grow up.
Wearing any pants?
No.
Okay.
You have missed this. Admit it. The thrill of the chase, the blood pumping through your veins, just the two of us against the rest of the world. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary to be part of something that creates that much interest and love and debate, and yeah, it really is. It's very special.
You're ordinary, you're on the side of the angels.
Oh, I may be on the side of the angels, but don't think for 1 second that I am one of them.
네, 스티븐 모펫 씨를 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Hello. Just so I know what I'm up to, can I get a quick show of hands? How many of you here are working right now as television writers? It's all right, you don't have to be ashamed, it's a good thing. And how many of you would describe yourselves as wanting to work as television writers? Again, it's a perfectly reasonable ambition. Please put your hands up. Great. Okay. I am here, I am told, to tell you how to write a successful television show. So let's get this out of the way right now. I don't know. Which means we have roughly 28 minutes of me kind of filling you in on some anecdotes, I think. But that's okay. I don't think that's a sensible question. How do you write a successful television show? Because there is absolutely nobody in the world who can answer it. Nobody knows. Now, if you think I'm being modest, I'm not. I'm perfectly aware that I've got 2 highly successful television shows out there right now, globally doing brilliantly. So I would just hope that would mean that when I say nobody knows how this is done, that you'll know that I'm telling you the truth. It's not a sensible ambition for a writer. It's not a thing that can motivate you. I don't believe any writer in the world sits down and decides, today I'm going to write a success. It's kind of nonsense, isn't it? There are people, many people, sensible, intelligent people, who would approach this problem by saying, let's analyze past successes. Let's look at what's worked before and what might work again. Let's look at successful actors and good, viable formats. Let's look at what works and let's try to do it again. Is that a sensible approach? No. It sounds sensible, it's not. What I'm going to do is talk about the two shows I'm here for, principally Sherlock, I think, how they came to be, and why I think aiming for success is kind of nonsense. If you're writers, and aspiring writers, I'll bet there's something you've always wanted to write. Something that burns at the back of your mind as the real reason you became a writer. And if you're typical of writers, you've probably hidden it away in shame. You don't want to think about it. You think that's silly. But nonetheless, it's the thing you keep coming back to. The thing that you're passionate about. It might even have been the thing that made you want to be a writer in the first place. But you think it's too silly to go and pitch anywhere. I promise you, you'd be doing yourself a favor if you left this room right now, went home, and started to work on that one. Not on what you think might get made, not on what you think the broadcaster wants, not what you think other people might like. Go home right now, no, don't, and start working on the thing that you are most passionate about. Now, my lovely wife, sitting there, second row, blonde. I know it's surprising. I got lucky. Tells me, as a producer, one thing she doesn't like is somebody coming in with 4 ideas. She says she'd like people to come in with 1 idea that they are insanely passionate about. Writing, as all of you know, is hellishly difficult. And it can be depressing in a very quick while. So, in a very short while. So you need to start loving it so much. And however improbable and silly your scheme, your plan is, you need to not lose confidence in it. And that's the one you need to try and sell. How do you ever persuade, though, all those sensible grown-up people in suits who are going to buy your television idea, you hope, that this is a good idea? Well, that's where the writing comes in. That's what it's about. There are a number of things that no one ever says about writing scripts, I don't think, that are terribly common sense and that I'd like to talk about today. You've got your passionate idea. You love this thing to bits. You've always wanted to write it. How are you going to persuade anyone to do it? You're going to write the best script in the world. Not an acceptable script. Not one that's just as good as the other ones you see on television. The actual best. Better than all those scripts by the more established writers. Better than anything you've seen. And what does that vague statement actually mean? What does storytelling do to you that lets you know it's brilliant? It's so simple, and people forget it so much. Storytelling, good storytelling, just makes you want to keep reading. Now think about that honestly. It's so unique when you find it in a script, when you read a script that makes you want to keep reading, that uses every skill of the writer just to pull you through those pages. It's hard, but it's the only thing that works. You've got this idea you're passionate about. It's worth spending some time on it. This is how you're going to spend your time, in my view. This would be how it works. You've got to imagine your script reader hates you personally. They're going to, and you probably think they do. The first person to read your script hates you. And it's true, because you are stopping them going out tonight. You're stopping them playing with their children or going upstairs to bed. They've got to read your damn script and another bunch of losers in a great big pile. So what are you going to do? You've got all this time in your hands. You've been thinking about this idea for years. You're going to write the most exciting first page ever. You want to imagine that that script reader who hates you and wants to go to bed is reading the last script of the night and looking for a reason to stop. How do you pull them through that page? How do you keep them going line after line? You entertain them. You excite them. You intrigue them. I often think, to put this idea another way, that this is how we must think of our audience. I always think of the audience as about to leave the room, putting their jacket on, going to the pub to meet their girlfriend or boyfriend, to find love and happiness. And I would like to do everything in my power to stop them. I would like to start the show with something so intriguing, you come back into the room and sit down again. Now that's how you begin. That's how anything begins. You have to find a way to do that. This is television in the modern age. As you'll see in this very forum, we're competing with Facebook, computers, all manners of entertainment that never were there before. We've got to stop them doing anything else. If you write a first page that makes your script reader turn to the second page with enthusiasm, you've got a great chance of a show that's going to fly. And what do you do on page 2? What do you do on page 3? What do you do on page 4? How do you get that bored, resentful, desperate to go to bed script reader right to the end of the end of your script? You never, ever give them a reason to stop. Ever. I think it's worth talking, or rather, I think it is worth watching television shows and paying attention to when you give up. I do this. I watch a TV show and think, at what point did I start talking to Sue? At what point did I get up to make the coffee or go for a glass of wine? Why did I stop watching? Really, seriously, pay close attention, because it is valuable information to every time you ever were tempted to stop. I think there are two classic roadblocks in writing a script. I don't know that there's an equivalent word here, but I'll try it out. There's the exposition scene. Does that mean anything to you? Where you explain the plot? No. Exposition? Okay. There's a moment where you have to explain what's going on. People fear that in scripts, because you've had your exciting cold open where you've dragged them kicking and screaming into your exciting world, and then at some point you're going to have to explain what's going on. Exposition. The trick with explaining what's going on is, of course, to make people want to know what's going on before you tell them. An example of this is a bad exposition scene works like this. When you come home from work, each of you, and your significant other asks, "How was your day?" Now that generally happens to everyone. They ask, "How was your day?" And if you start telling them in detail, they won't listen. You know that too. They're bored by you. That's bad exposition. Here is how to make your significant other listen to you. Significant other asks, "How was your day?" You answer, "I cannot tell you." Now you've got them. And if you delay and tease, they'll listen. That's how you deal with the roadblock of exposition. Make it a mystery, tease it, and get to the reveal later. Exposition, rename the word exposition, reveal. It's exciting when you do it that way. And it's fun. The other big roadblock, I think, the other occasion when I get up and walk out of the room, is when you cut from one scene to another and you have to meet a bunch of new characters. It's exhausting. You think, I was perfectly happy with that bunch of characters. Why do I have to meet these ones now? I'm tired. I quite liked that. Why do I have to change? So many times when I'm reading a script, and I do read scripts because in both my Sherlock and Doctor Who jobs, I have to read other people's scripts. That's the bit where I give up. I just think, oh no. Why do I have to go on to this new bit? I don't understand it. I was so happy with those other characters. Finding a way to cut, to link from one scene to another, effectively and brilliantly, to tell the story on the cut, so that when you cut to another scene, you know why you want to be there. It removes the bump and stops people turning off. Quite possibly stops that script reader who, remember, hates you from putting your script down. Now, that's a lot of theory. I hope some of it made any sense at all. Putting it in context. When I grew up, my favorite things, my absolutely favorite things, were Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Who. If you'd asked me back then at the age of 5 or 6, what are your favorite things, I'd have told you Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Who. It may look as though I've devised 2 hit shows by looking at graphs and being clever, but I haven't. It just so happened that at a certain point in my life, those 2 shows, those 2 ideas, became wildly popular. All the windows aligned and the sunshine finally reached me. It was a relief and it was a joyous shock when that happened, but it's not something you can anticipate. To give you a measure of it, I was so obsessed with Sherlock Holmes that I disapproved tremendously of the updated versions of Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. I used to sit there thinking, if they hadn't updated this, this would have been really, really good. Ironically enough, of course, I've grown up to be the man who updated it. But by being the absolute zealous fan who disapproved, I sort of knew how you would make it work for people who would disapprove just as badly as I did. I remember also there was a film called The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, and I knew about it because I'd seen the poster. And I was shocked and appalled because on the poster there was a naked woman, something I had never seen, being a Sherlock Holmes fan. And I remember thinking, that's wrong, I said with youthful disapproval. There are no naked women in Sherlock Holmes. Again, I grew up to be the man who put a naked woman in Sherlock Holmes. it seemed to work. I eventually saw that film, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, and much as I really enjoyed it, I still sort of disapproved of it because Mycroft was too thin. And because there was some sort of gay subtext between Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And that couldn't be right at all. I went from that to a place where sitting with Mark Gatiss, my collaborator, and the very thin Sherlock on a very thin Mycroft on Sherlock, to a place where the mere idea of getting to do Sherlock Holmes on television was beyond exciting. That was my privately nourished ambition. And I thought, standing next to the mighty monolith that was Doctor Who, Mark and me and Sue could get away with this little show that was really for ourselves, this little art house piece. We thought it would get about 2 or 3 million viewers and maybe an award from Poland or something. The last thing on our minds, the very last thing, was that this show would one day have me talking to a bunch of people in Korea. If you had asked me not that long ago, how would you make a show to appeal to Koreans, I would have reasonably pointed out that I'd never been to Korea or met any. But apparently, without even trying, I managed to make a show, along with Sue and Mark, that appealed to Korea. Again, if you're sitting here wondering how to make a successful show in Korea and asking me what the answer is, I don't know. But would anyone have guessed that it was making a show about a slightly peculiar English detective? That passion is where you begin on a show. I think all the other things I talked about are related to it. Because what you're always trying to do, I'm still trying to do in both the shows I work on, is try to explain, line by line, scene by scene, why this is the best thing ever. And as I do it, I sort of believe that's true. I'm not trying to please anybody else. I'm not trying to show off. I'm just trying to say, look, isn't this great? Moment by moment, beat by beat. Isn't this the most wonderful thing ever? It's like you're the curator of a special museum and you're going around looking at all the marvelous exhibits. Look what I can show you now. Look what I can make happen. Look how great this is. The same experience for me, though I think it is less well known here, was the experience of doing Doctor Who, which I was a huge fan of throughout my childhood. So, not a clue how to make a successful series. I do know how to, I think if you stick to the idea that your objective is to make people read your script and to keep people in the room with the television set while your show is on, if you do that, you can't go tremendously far wrong. More than anything, people want to be entertained, and the simple objective of never ever boring them is a fine and noble one. Also, if you're very, very lucky, we get to come here and I get to talk to you lot. And it is remarkable to us and exciting to us to see how you've embraced this show. Now, I suspect when we get to the Q&A, we're going to get more into stories about Benedict Cumberbatch and all that part of it. Yes, I can feel those questions bubbling up already. I think it's worth, however, ending this part by saying that I think, and surely this is true for every aspiring writer and for every writer who's doing it, the mere idea that you'd be able to persuade people to give you money and a good living for making up stories and then having people get into costumes and prat around under lights. The mere idea that you could get that to happen at all is unbelievably exciting. It's an extraordinary thing. It's a special thing. So the reason I'm saying all that is all you're trying to do is get your show made. A success happens or it doesn't. And as I began by saying, nobody knows if it will or it won't. But I hope you have the very best of luck in trying. I think we're now moving on to the Q&A. Thank you for listening.
네, 굉장히 당황스럽습니다. 성공하는 이야기의 공식이라고 제목을 달고 오늘 강연회를 준비했는데 앞서 나오신 분은 재능을 얘기하셨고 두 번째 나오신 스티브 모펫 씨는 잘 모르겠다고 그랬는데요. Q&A 시간을 통해서 좀 더 깊은 얘기를 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. 의자 준비해 주시고요. 앉아서 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 사실 그 스티브 모펫 씨가 한국에 방문한다는 그 뉴스가 전해진 게 한 2달 된 것 같은데요. 그때부터 인터넷상에서 각종 질문들이 막 쇄도했습니다. 아마 굉장히 본인도 놀라셨겠지만 한국에 많은 팬들이 있는데 그분들께서 제기하셨던 질문들 몇 가지 좀 정리를 해서 제가 대신 좀 여쭤보는 시간을 가지도록 하겠습니다. 네, 오케이. 의자 갖다 주세요. 감사합니다. Please stop.
Yes.
앞서서 말씀하시기를 본인도 본인의 작품이 이렇게 성공할 줄은 몰랐다고 말씀하셨는데 성공하고 나서 이렇게 많은 인기를 얻고 나서 되돌아볼 때 이 셜록이라는 캐릭터가 이렇게 많은 인기를 끈 이유가 어디에 있을까요?
Well, I think you have to look at the source material. Sherlock Holmes, before I got anywhere near it, was without doubt the biggest hit in fiction. If you look at when the stories were first released in the Strand magazine, it was an unprecedented hit. It was huge. In fact, it had the sort of reaction that the modern series gets. When Doyle killed off Sherlock Holmes for a while, people attacked him in the street, which was very close to happening with Mark and me, and we only killed him for about 5 minutes. So part of it is the source material. A lot of it's to do with the fact that we were lucky enough to catch Benedict Cumberbatch at the exact moment that he was about to become a star. I don't think for one moment that if he hadn't done Sherlock, he wouldn't have become a star. I think he would have. But we were the ones lucky enough just to get him at the moment he was about to catch fire and give him the right coat and the right gloves and to get, a female following for him, which has to be seen to be believed, which he was never going to get playing all those posh roles in the theatre. He was already a hugely respected actor. But to see somebody go from hugely respected to international star is glorious. So that's a lot to do with it.
원작 말씀도 하셨지만은 그 원작에 나오는 셜록과 그 쇼에 나오는 셜록은 좀 다른 차이점이 분명히 있을 텐데 새로 각색하면서 새로 재창조하면서 어떤 부분을 신경을 썼나요?
Well, I'll start by disagreeing with you. I don't think they are. I think we're very close to the Sherlock of the original. Because, Mark and I, being the fanboys we are, we wouldn't just overwrite him. That would be wrong. We sat for a long time deciding that we're going to get it right, where we thought most people had got it wrong. Sherlock Holmes is not completely emotionless in the original. He regularly laughs. He laughs far more often than he ever takes drugs. He's not a manic depressive. He's quite happy in his own skin. The only differences we made to Sherlock Holmes was we changed the era he lived in. I don't think we changed him at all. I think, dare I say it, we got him right. We preserved him. He does begin in the Sherlock Holmes stories, in the original Doyle stories, as a very cold and remote man, and he develops into a much more heroic and wise one. And we're sort of, I suppose, a third of the way into that process. But no, we haven't made massive changes, and we wouldn't want to. I think many of the more recent Sherlock Holmes adaptations have made bigger changes. There's been a tremendous drive to make him some sort of manic depressive. He's not. He's not in the original stories. He's not like that at all.
예.
Yeah.
저는 보면서 어릴 때 저도 그 코난 도일의 소설을 읽었었던 기억이 있는데 그냥 좀 고독한 사람이라고 생각했었는데 이 쇼에서는 굉장히 까칠한 사람이구나 그런 생각을 많이 하셨을 것 같아서 이런 질문들을 하시는 분들이 많았을
sorry,
것
lonely.
같습니다.
I don't think I quite got that right. What?
Not very kind and
Sorry, this has just given up. Hang on a sec. Not very kind. He varies from story to story. If anyone ever, and this is a feature of the original, if anybody ever maltreats a woman, he gets incandescent with rage. There's a man who is going to, who's been mistreating his stepdaughter, and whereas in our version he just threatens to throw him out, in Doyle's version he grabs a riding crop off the wall and decides to try and beat him up. Very Irene Adler. He regularly laughs. He has a sense of humour. He's not at all humourless. And there are moments when his emotion really comes out, like when he discovers that Henry Baskerville isn't dead. He is exuberant with joy. So he's not a glacier. He's a volcano, and he keeps it packed in there. But no, I think we've got that right from the original.
Right. 아마 그 부분의 매력을 느끼시는 시청자분들도 굉장히 많을 것 같다는 생각이 들고요. 캐릭터는 원작에서 가져왔습니다. 하지만 스토리는 시대는 분명히 현대로 왔고요. 스토리도 조금 그 원작에 없던 이제 새로운 미스테리를 풀어가는 과정을 다루고 있는데 그 에피소드를 만들어내면서 가장 힘들었던 점이 어떤 걸까요?
Well, the principal difficulty is with the exception really of The Hound of the Baskervilles and probably The Sign of Four. None of the stories are long enough. They're all about 20 minutes of screen time. They're short stories, very short stories. So our biggest problem is how do we generate enough material? The one story that has got 90 minutes in it is The Hound of the Baskervilles. And God knows how many times it's been told. People can sing along to that one. So we had to make changes to it. We had to sort of make our version of it. What we try to do is take a sort of magpie approach and take great bits from different stories and jam them together. Sometimes we just take tiny little pieces, like Mark, when he was writing The Hounds of Baskerville, was trying to think of a really cool way of Sherlock Holmes arriving in 221B. So he took the very beginning of a story called Black Peter, where Sherlock Holmes, for no good reason, walks in with a harpoon covered in blood. And we just put that in. There's loads of little nuggets in Doyle that are so good that no one's ever done.
그렇군요. 뭐 지금 아까 영상에도 잠깐 나왔습니다. 200개국 넘는 곳에 지금 그 셜록이 수출이 되면서 사람들이 많은 관심을 주고 있어서 부담스럽다는 생각은 안 하십니까, 혹시? 이제 계속 시즌을 더해가면서 고민되는 부분은 어떤 걸까요?
I don't think you ever worry about that. I don't think you can worry about. I mean, as I was saying just up there, you make the show for yourself and hope other people like it too. So we never, when we're in our leaky studio in Wales making the show, it doesn't feel like we're in front of an international audience of millions. It just feels like we're making that show we make with our friends. it's only around the time when you're starting to think about it's now going to be put on television and all those people are going to see it. Only then do you start becoming aware of that huge audience and that huge pressure.
오케이. 그 직접적으로 작품을 쓰시기도 하지만은 그 제작에도 관여를 하시고 연출을 직접 하시지는 않지만 어느 정도를 관여하십니까? 한국에서는 이제 그 작가의 영역과 아무래도 연출자의 영역이 좀 많이 구분돼서 있는데요. 어떻게 작업을 하십니까?
Well, because I'm also an executive producer. I'm married to the producer, and it's it's my show, Mark's show, Sue's show first. We're kind of the director's boss, so that's fairly easy. But actually, I think one of the great successes of Sherlock has been Paul McGuigan's visualization of our first director, who's still done the most of them. And we work in a very collaborative way that I'm fairly used to working with. I think it is also true in Britain that there is a sort of false separation between the writer and the director. And it's very wrong. The writer and the director should be best pals because they're doing the same job at different stages in the process. They should be the best friends. They shouldn't be separated. It's a shame that that's happened, that sort of competitiveness between who's really responsible for it. Is it the writer? Is it the director? The answer, of course, it's both, as well as the producer, as well as the composer, as well as the designer. All these things are huge team efforts, and trying to pretend it's really the authorial work of one person is absolute nonsense, as anyone who's worked on a movie or a TV show would know.
그 사실 그 셜록이라는 작품을 보면서 그 영상미라든지 그 편집 기법이라든지 이런 것들에 되게 매료되는 분들도 아마 방송에서 일하시는 분들은 많을 것 같은데요. 그런 아이디어들은 어떻게 만들어내시나요? 기법들이랄까?
A lot of that was down to Paul McGuigan and Charlie Phillips, the first director and editor on Sherlock. And they had a very sort of creatively explosive collaboration. Sue put them together. Sue thought they should work together and thought they'd be good together. So it was her idea, and they're both sort of mad scientists in the cutting room, really experimenting with ways of getting from one scene to another, and sort of egging each other on with how mad they could be. And when I saw how mad they could be and Mark saw that, we'd start egging them on in the scripts, trying to work out what's the maddest scene transition you can write. I think climaxing in the utterly brilliant shot, which is entirely from the mind of McGuigan, when Sherlock passes out in Scandal in Belgravia and the bed rises up behind him and he just disappears into it. Which was a practical effect. It was just a bed and a hydraulic, but it's such a brilliant visual. Since then, with the other directors, we are very clear that we want them to be experimental. We want, their show reel to consist entirely of shots from Sherlock. We want it to be as exotic and as interesting and as gimmicky. In a way, shots that are too gimmicky for other shows, we want them on Sherlock. We want the director and the editor to show off.
네. 작가님 개인에 대해서도 우리 스티븐 모펫 씨 개인에 대해서도 좀 여쭤보고 싶습니다. 그 팬들과 굉장히 소통을 많이 하는 작가로 알려져 있는데 뭐.
It's all lies.
그래요. 예, 팬들에게 뭐 심지어 화를 내는 경우도 있다고 들었는데 그것도 나의 작품에 대해서 뭐 이렇게.
No, I don't.
No? Okay.
No, I don't. I'm not.
그 한국에서는 그 드라마가 진행되는 과정에 이제 팬들의 반응에 따라서 스토리가 바뀌기도 하고 예, 그런 경우들이 있는데 그 팬들의 반응에 대해서 그 영향을 받으시나요? 어떻게 영향을 받으시나요?
No.
No, definitely.
No.
Okay.
Well, I don't think the fans would want us to be. And at any rate, I mean, because I do these two shows which have huge fan bases, if I had to read all of it, I'd never get any writing done, or sleeping or eating. There's tons of it out there. So I sort of cut myself off from it. But the idea that I've somehow got cross or angry or that, I just haven't. But I think people have made up that story in their heads that I have. And I think there is a fake Twitter account, which is not me, going around saying things. But no, not at all. Not at all. I'm terribly friendly and nice.
오케이. 한국에서 주로 인기를 끄는 이제 드라마들은 연속성이 있는 스토리들인데요. 이런 셜록 같은 장르물이나 뭐 SF 뭐 이런 것들은 상대적으로 인기가 좀 덜한데 그 차이점은 뭐라고 생각하십니까?
Sorry, you mean episodic?
예. 그러니까 하나의 한 회분의 방송으로 이야기가 끝나지 않는 경우가 많거든요. 스토리가 진행되면서 연속극이라고 우리나라에서는 부르는 것들.
All right. Right. Well, loads of our shows in the UK are the same, and I do like a cliffhanger myself now and then. But it's just I mean, there's always an overarching story in Sherlock. So you'll have had this week's mystery solved or this week's villain dispatched, but you'll have something hanging on for next week that you want to see. And the same with Doctor Who. But generally speaking, yes, they are broadly standalone. I personally prefer that one. But I think if you're writing I don't know if this is true or not, but I'll say it anyway. I think if you're writing a big hit show, you have to be aware that quite a lot of your audience don't watch it every week. The bigger the hit, the more casual viewers you have. So you have to let them be able to catch up. Ha ha ha, says I.
Right. 예, 뭐 영국도 크게 다르지 않을 거라고 생각합니다만 한국에서는 지금 TV 시청자층이 많이 올드해지는 문제가 뭐 심각한 문제로 받아들이고 있습니다. 사실 인터넷, 스마트폰으로 많이 다운받아서 보고요. 이런 부분들은 이제 방송 작가들에게 있어서는 굉장히 큰 고민거리인데요. 어떻게 생각하십니까? 어떻게 대처하거나 계획하고 계십니까?
Why do we care where they get their television from, so long as they get our television? My son, my 14-year-old son, prefers to watch television on his iPad. He just likes it better because he can watch in his own time, and he prefers the interface, and it's a better screen. All those things. The way in which the content we make, the television programs we make, reaches the audience is going to change beyond recognition, and really quite quickly. By the time the next generation have grown up, it will be unrecognizable. That doesn't mean there won't be drama shows and comedy shows and game shows. They'll all still be there, but they'll be getting into your hands by a different means. I mean, you know, many years ago, we all had to go to the campfire to hear people tell stories. Now we have printing presses and we can go home and read them. It's the same process. The technology gets better, so people will expect television to be something they can consume on the bus or on the train or when they feel like it. I certainly think the age of scheduled television, of, you know, saying you must be in your house at 8 o'clock to watch our show, I think that's done. I think by the time my son is grown up, he'll be amused at the idea that television dictates your time. Your bookcase doesn't tell you when you can read.
오케이. 이제 크리에이터가 되기 전에 선생님이셨다고 들었습니다. 어떻게 해서 작가가 되려고 결심을 했고요?
I sent in a lot of scripts, and one day somebody liked something. I mean, the usual process. I wasn't a teacher for very long. I was only about 2.5 years. There is only one way, as I was trying to say earlier, that is to send in a script that somebody wants to make. There isn't a special route.
앞서서도 작가님들이 뭐 많이 궁금해하셨던 분들 중에 그 부분 중에 하나인데요. 집필을 할 때 어떻게 하시나요? 그러니까
The
끊임없이
writers
아이디어
had that question. Alarming. Sorry.
그 끊임없이 앉아서 아이디어가 나올 때까지 뭐 기다리는 스타일도 있을 거고요. 일정한 정해진 시간에 딱 정해놓고 쓸 때도 쓰는 분들도 아마 있을 것 같고요. 아이디어가 떠오를 때는 언제든지 작업을 할 때도 있을 것 같은데 어떤 식으로 작업을 하시나요, 보통?
I've got these days because I've got kids. You know, I work my hours. You know, I get up and I've got on Doctor Who and Sherlock lots of other responsibilities on the shows that I've got to do. So I have to sometimes squeeze the writing into tight little corners. I've just been in a room here writing some Doctor Who because I'm very late on a script. So wait for inspiration. We'll leave that to poets, shall we? I think television writers write to get the show made.
예. 자, 제가 드린 질문은 여기까지만 하고요. 아마 상당히 많은 분들이 질문하고 싶으신 것들이 많을 것 같은데, 네, 질문을 받아보도록 하겠습니다.
Okay.
예. 손을 들어서 표해 주시면 마이크 전달해 드리겠습니다. 네. 마이크 받아 주십시오.
네, 반갑습니다. 예, 셜록을 되게 재밌게 봤는데, 네. 근데 한 가지, 이제 선생님을 하시다가 이제 작가로 넘어오게 되셨는데, 사실 선생님을 하실 때 한국적인 상황에서도 안정된 직장을 갖고 있다가 그런 쪽으로 넘어가는 게 쉽지 않을 거라고 생각합니다. 또 시나리오를 쓰다 보면 회의가 될 때가 있지 않습니까? 이게 과연 많은 사람들을 진동시킬 수 있는 이야기인지 아니면 나 혼자만 진동하고 끝나는 건지, 그런 쪽에서 지금은 이미 성공하셨으니까 내가 쓰는 작품에 대해서 어느 정도 자신감도 있고 좋아해 주는 사람도 많으니까 뭐 좀 컨디션이 안 좋을 때도 힘을 받을 수 있지만, 그 과거에 아는 사람들이 내 작품을 몰라주고 주변 사람들이 넌 뭐 그냥 선생이나 하지 왜 그런 걸 쓰고 있니? 라고 물었을 때 자기 자신한테 했던 그런 말들이나 그런 다짐, 그런 정신 상태, 그게 좀 궁금합니다.
Well, first of all, the fear and the paranoia never goes away, ever, ever, ever. Every single script I ever write, I think I will be unable to finish. And I sit and look at it as I just was there in despair, thinking, why would anybody want to watch this? That never goes away. That feeling of inadequacy and genuine fear. So there's some good news for you. The part of that is good news is that's your self-editor at work. That's your editor in your brain keeping you up to the mark and making you work harder. So writing should feel like that. Writing should feel terrifying. How did I react when people said, you should remain a teacher? Oh, I was young and full of myself and I just said, no, I shouldn't. But I got lucky, I did. I got a TV series, a children's TV series quite early on, and so I managed to get out. But by God, I worked at it. I just worked at it. It's worth it. It's worth working at, you know. It's worth really, really trying. But don't imagine that comes from confidence, because you'll never have that. Not if you're a writer. Confidence is for easy jobs.
네, 또 질문 받겠습니다. 앞쪽에 계시네요.
제가 사실 모페 씨 작품을 보고 방송 작가가 되고 싶었는데요. 몇 가지 좀 질문할 게 많은데요. 일단 슬럼프 극복에 대해서 질문을 해보고 싶어요. 여태까지 작품을 쓰시면서 슬럼프가 있었던 적은 없는지 궁금하고요. 그리고 또 그 닥터우 시즌 5랑 같이 그 기다리는 소녀나 그런 동화적 이야기 같은 걸 쓰실 때 어떤 곳에서 영감을 받으시는지 궁금하고요. 그리고 혹시 여태까지 쓰신 모든 드라마나 그런 에피소드 중에서 제일 좋아하시는 에피소드가 있다면은 그것도 궁금하고요. 그리고 그리고 혹시 닥터우 관련해서 이제 새로운 닥터가 나왔잖아요. 그런데 여태까지 닥터들과는 다르게 갈리프레이가 고향이 있다는 사실을 알게 되면서 성격이 바뀌거나 그러지는 않나요?
Wow. Okay. Are there slumps? Are there downtimes? Yes. Yes, most of writing is being unable to write. And the next largest section of time is writing stuff that's absolute rubbish. You need to learn to score out all the stuff that's rubbish and just keep in the stuff that's good. That's just a depressing sentence to say, so imagine what it's like to live it. So yes, there are nothing but down times and slumps. That's just what I was saying earlier. It's the editor in your brain telling you it's not good enough yet. And the editor in your brain is right. It's one of the few jobs where your deep sense of insecurity is entirely justified. What were the other questions? Fairy tale oeuvre, that was
Inspired.
I don't know. I think that's probably just inspired directly from Doctor Who. I always loved Doctor Who, so I love the freedom of making up monsters and silly stories and time travel. I love time travel. I love time travel movies. So I probably put far too much time travel into Doctor Who. Mind you, he is a time traveller, so come on. There's a new Doctor? Yes, there is. Well, he's not different from all the other ones. The first 8 Doctors all had Gallifrey hanging in the sky behind them. They knew he was there. It was there. It's only 9, 10 and 11 who for a while believed that Gallifrey was gone. And number 12 has arrived knowing that there's a possibility of redemption. But as to how that works out, you'll have to wait until Mr. Capaldi arrives in your televisions. And what's my favourite? Either maybe A Scandal in Belgravia for Sherlock, maybe The Day of the Doctor, because it was so difficult to write, and it worked out. Maybe Blink, one of those 3. I think probably Scandal in Belgravia is the one that might tip it for me. I love doing that. Did I miss any of your questions? Because you did have about 17.
다 했습니다.
Okay.
예. 손 들어주시면은 마이크 전달해 드리겠습니다. 앞쪽에 있네요. 네.
먼저 한국에 오셔가지고 이렇게 좋은 강연 해주신 거 정말 감사하고요. 셜록은 TV 정말 안 보는 저희 아버지가 다음 편 언제 나오냐고 항상 저에게 물어보시는 드라마예요. 그리고 강연 내용에서 성공하는 글쓰기, 그러니까 어떻게 하면은 사람들이 이렇게 독자들을 붙잡고 있을 수 있는지 말씀을 해주셨는데 솔직히 잘 알고 계신다고 생각해요. 항상 당신은 마지막에 등장인물을 죽이시고 다음 편에 살려요. 마치 코난 도일처럼. 그럼 저는 계속 볼 수밖에 없죠. 왜 살았는지 모르니까. 정말 그래서 항상 독자를 몰입하게 만드는 글을 쓴다고 생각하는데 혹시 나중에 지금은 드라마 극작가로 일을 하고 계시는데 소설을 쓸 그런 계획 같은 건 혹시 있으실까요? 알런 베넷처럼? 그리고 마이크를 가져가기 전에 미리 말하겠는데 마크 게티스에게 사랑한다고 꼭 전해주시고
Again, last bit. I shall.
그렇게 하겠습니다.
Picking up the wrong tree there, darling.
그리고 트위터 다시 해줬으면 좋겠어요. 왜냐면 닥터우 분명 다음 시즌을 보고 난 후에 마지막에 당신 이름을 외치고 싶어질 테니까 꼭 당신 계정이 살아있으면 좋겠어요. 이상입니다.
What? Twitter. I think he still tweets, doesn't he?
Your Twitter.
My Twitter. Right, what was the question? I always kill people and bring them back again. Or do I? I'm sentimental. Well, I didn't bring Amy and Rory back. They're still dead. Oh. I've killed them several times in one episode. There's only so often I can do that. Well, I'm very pleased that your father likes it. That's thrilling. I do have a fondness, it must be said, for a happy ending. I do like it when you think somebody's dead and they're alive. But the most famous one that I've done is Sherlock Holmes dying and coming back. But that wasn't me. That was written before I was born. That's a 110-year-old spoiler. Doyle did it and brought him back. So, you know, when somebody dies in a movie and there's no body, it can only mean one thing. So, I rambled through that.
네, 손 들어주십시오. 네, 맨 앞에도 있네요.
질문이 좀 짧은데 셜록 다음 시즌 언제 나와요?
I have a very short answer. I don't know. But it will. It will come on. All right? But we do have two of the most successful actors in the world playing the leads. And we are right now negotiating with them about when they can fit them in. But it is going to come back. There are going to be more. We even know a bit about what we're going to do. So don't worry. But don't be in a hurry either. Okay? Watch the reruns. Watch some Basil Rathbone or Jeremy Brett.
네. 손 들어서 표해 주시면은 마이크를 가져다 드리겠습니다. 이 앞쪽에 있으신데요.
네, 닥터우 팬인데요. 닥터우를 보다 보면 이야기가 너무나 널뛰어서 어쩔 때는 약간 이해하기가 힘들다고 느낄 때도 있지만 어쨌든 끝까지 보게 되는데요. 그렇게 굉장히 다양하고 왔다 갔다 하는 얘기를 하면서도 설득력을 유지하시는 비결이 뭔가요?
Well, if you thought you completely understood it, you might stop watching. I don't know. I don't think that the key ingredient to enjoying a show is understanding it, oddly enough. I think it's caring about it. You know, I think it's caring about the characters and what they're going through. When I watch things like Doctor Who, I regularly don't follow every last detail, but I kind of figure out, well, if they all understand it, I'm fine, and I know who I want to win and who I want to lose. So I think your engagement with the story is about your relationship with the characters. If you want to sit and take notes, you'll get all of it. But, you know, to be honest, I think the complexity of Doctor Who can be overstated. You know, the man in the blue box will win, the monsters will lose, and there'll be another one on next week.
네. 손을 들어서 표시해 주시면은 네, 뒤쪽에.
네, 안녕하세요. 제가 궁금한 것은 그 협업을 하실 때 작품의 방향성이나 구체적인 어떤 디테일에 대해서 그 다른 분들과 의견 충돌이 있거나 나는 꼭 이걸 살려야겠다 하는데 반대쪽에서는 그런 의견을 갖지 않을 때 어떻게 의견을 조율하시면서 가시는지 그 구체적인 방법이 궁금합니다.
Good question, boring answer. For the most part, we don't disagree very much on Sherlock or on Doctor Who. We all seem to be pretty much on this in agreement. So there are very, very few discussions of that kind. as to what we do when there is a disagreement, the only rational thing you can ever do, which is the guy with the best argument wins. It's not a matter of authority. It's not a matter of saying, you will do as I tell you. It's, we all sit and try and persuade each other. But in all honesty, there's very little of it. I remember an interviewer once asked Mark Gatiss and myself, what do you do when you two disagree? And we looked at each other and realized we never actually had disagreed. So that's quite sinister. Two men, one brain.
네. 자, 또 손 들어주시면은, 예. 앞쪽에, 가운데 쪽에 질문하실 분이 있습니다.
네, 감사합니다. 방금 누락된 질문인데 제가 좀 궁금해서 소설과 극작가라는 것은 둘 다 똑같이 글을 쓰는 재능을 필요로 하는 건데 어떤 면 때문에 극을 쓰는 것이 소설을 쓰는 것보다 더 매력적으로 다가가셨는지 또 혹시 훗날에 소설을 집필할 생각은 있으신지 그것이 하나 궁금하고요. 두 번째로는 한국에서는 장르 드라마가 굉장히 대중화되어 있지 않은데 그런데 이제 SF 장르라는 어떤 대중에게 굉장히 낯선 장르가 50년을 이어오고 그리고 팬들에게 매력적으로 다가가는 그 비결과 힘은 무엇이라고 생각하시는지 그것이 궁금합니다.
Okay. Books. I don't know really why I was so fixated when I was little on writing scripts. I think the answer is probably incredibly childish because I wanted to persuade my sisters to perform my scripts in front of my parents. I think that's what got me fascinated by the process. I would like to write books someday. I'm just a bit busy at the moment with the two shows, but yes, I think that would be great. I think all storytelling is the same. I think storytelling is the same, whatever medium you do it in. And occasionally, usually for a newspaper column or something, or a magazine column, I'll write in prose, and I do quite like writing prose. So yes, that's absolutely a possibility. Science fiction. Now that's interesting. There actually isn't that much science fiction on British television, and there never was. Doctor Who, back in 1963, when it began, was sort of out on its own as a sci-fi show. There weren't a whole bunch of them. And when it came back in 2005, when Russell brought it back, there were no sci-fi shows around. And everyone said people don't like science fiction. And what Russell would say, and what I would say, and Mark would say is, there's no science fiction on television, but there's a ton of it in the cinema. It's the same people watching television as watch the movies. Why wouldn't they like science fiction on television? Since then, there is more science fiction, but not that much. It's, in a way, I'd have expected the huge success of Doctor Who in the UK to have led to more science fiction, which I would love. But there's not that much. It's a genre that television, for whatever reason, is suspicious of. It's like they didn't notice that Star Wars was really quite successful.
네, 또 손 들어주시면은 마이크 넘겨드리겠습니다. 앞쪽에, 예.
감사합니다. 닥터우 같은 경우, 닥터우나 셜록이나 굉장히 견고하고 단단한 그런 틀을 가지고 있는 작품인데요. 그것을 이제 가지고 재해석하고 혹은 창조하는 데서 가장 염두하고 싶은 그런 걸 좀 들어보고 싶은데 괜찮으신지.
What do I focus on? The things that I like best, really. I mean, just I'm writing a scene for Doctor Who right now, which is full of things that I used to love in Doctor Who when I was a kid. You're sort of recreating, in a way, the thrill that you had when you watched it.
When I was a little boy, I would think, oh, I loved that bit, or I was scared by that bit, and I try and recreate that for another generation. Again, with Sherlock, Mark and me, we're just trying to find those moments that we love and show them to other people. So that's what we focus on. The really cool bits, that's what you focus on.
네, 손 들어주시면 마이크 드리겠습니다. 네, 가운데 줄에 예, 계시죠?
네, 안녕하세요.
Good afternoon.
그 셜록 홈즈를 셜록으로 재탄생시켜서 많은 사람들에게 사랑을 받았듯이 저 같은 경우에는 2007년에 작업하셨던 지킬 앤 하이드의 그 재해석작 지킬을 되게 좋아하는데요. 그 지킬이나 셜록처럼 과거에 있던 고전 작품들을 현대화시키거나 아니면 자신만의 방법으로 다시 쓰고 싶은 다른 고전 작품이나 캐릭터 이런 거 있는지 궁금합니다.
Well, it was never my intention to set about reinventing great Victorian acts of literature. It wasn't, and putting them in the modern day. It wasn't something I was obsessed with doing. I didn't mean to do it twice in a row. It just sort of happened. So I couldn't rule out doing it again. It's something that works. But the crucial thing is that those were things I really, really loved. I really, really wanted to do. It wasn't just thinking we can give a fresh coat of paint to this old Victorian monolith. It was a genuine passion for that. And there aren't that many things that I feel that way about. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. But if I had my eye on something, I'd be obliged to keep my mouth shut in case somebody else did it, wouldn't I?
네, 손 들어주시면 마이크 전달해 드리겠습니다. 저기 뒤쪽에 있으신 것 같은데요. 예. 네, 저 뒤쪽에.
예, 우선 그러니까 너무나도 좋아하는 작품의 작가를 이렇게 만나 뵙게 돼서 영광이고요. 우선 첫 번째 질문은 그 셜록 홈즈 시리즈 세 번째를 보면은 이전에는 나오지 않았던 그 베네딕트 컴버배치의 실제 부모님이나 아니면 그 왓슨 역할의 그 와이프, 그다음에 제가 알기로는 그 제작자님의 아드님까지 출연을 한 걸로 알고 있는데, 그렇게 현실에 있는 그런 실제 가족이 이렇게 드라마에 이렇게 출연을 하게 된 특별한 어떤 계기가 있는지, 그리고 실제로 그런 의도가 작품 속에 어떻게 이렇게 반영이 되는지, 그게 첫 번째로 궁금하고요. 그리고 두 번째,
저렴하기 때문에 썼습니다.
시리즈를 보다 보면은 굉장한 뭐라 그럴까? 그러니까 대본상에도 그렇고 구성상에도 그렇고 굉장히 천재성이 보이거든요. 그러니까 굉장히 감성적으로, 그러니까 이해를 하면서도 논리적으로 굉장히 완벽한 그런 대사들이 많이 보이는데, 혹시 본인이 천재라고 생각을 하시는지 그게 궁금합니다.
Definitely not a genius. Long way from that. It takes me ages to work those things out. If I were Sherlock Holmes or Doctor Who, I could do it like that. The first question about the family members, well, yes, I suppose that has been something that we ended up doing. But the fact was, this show is born of a marriage and a friendship. Mark Gatiss is a very old friend of mine. My wife, obviously I'm married to. So it feels natural that a family forms around it. We came up with what we thought was the fun idea of it for the very first time, seeing Sherlock Holmes' parents. And as it happens, Benedict's parents are both very, very fine actors. It would have been kind of silly to look anywhere else, wouldn't it? I mean, why would you bother? They look like his parents. He looks like their son. It was just right. No other genetic combination could have come up with anything quite as extraordinary as Benedict Cumberbatch. I got to tell you though, you take a look at Tim and Wanda when they were young, with little baby Benedict. He's the ugly one. They were amazing looking. They were the most handsome looking couple you can imagine. In the case of, what are the other ones? Yes. Well, we knew we wanted to bring in Mary Morstan, who appears in these stories. We knew we had to do that. And it so happens that Martin's real-life partner is Amanda Abington, whom we'd all worked with, and who is a terrific actress and looks absolutely right next to him. Just looks like they belong together because, well, they do. So again, why would you look elsewhere? And we knew she really wanted to do it, so we just went with that. The story of how our son got involved is more complex. I'd written the part of Little Sherlock, and Louis had seen it over my shoulder on the computer and said, "Can I play that part? Because I want to be an actor." And like all good parents, we said, "No." And he insisted and kept asking about it. So what we did in the end, and I remember sitting with him and telling him this, we said, "You can audition. There will be other children auditioning for the part. We are not going to have votes in it. Your mother and I will not have votes in this. The director, the other producer, the other people, they will make the decision, and we will tell them that we are putting no pressure on them at all to choose our son. In fact, we went as far as saying we're not even that sure that we want him to make that acting decision. So no pressure from us. Choose another kid if you want." So I told all that to Louis, and he looked at me and said, "You are the worst dad ever." But he genuinely, without any intervention from us, got the part under his own steam, on his own merits, and was absolutely terrific. But we had no part of making the decision. It wasn't particularly convenient for us, remember. That's 3 family members turning up at the studio. It was quite difficult. But wasn't he good?
네. 또 손을 들어주시면은 다음 질문 받도록 하겠습니다. 네, 저기 뒤쪽에 앉으신 분이 손을 드셨는데요.
먼저 이렇게 만나뵙게 되어서 정말 영광이고요. 저는 닥터 팬으로서 닥터 쪽을 물으려고 해요. 그러니까 전에 시즌 4까지는 러셀이 썼었고, 그 다음 시즌 5부터 모페 분이 이제 쓰셨는데, 시즌 4까지의 내용은 좀 시즌별로 나뉘는 느낌이 있었다면 시즌 5부터 7은 한꺼번에 묶인 느낌이 들었거든요. 그래서 혹시 시즌 5를 제작을 할 때 이미 시즌 7까지 다 염두를 하고 쓰셨는지 그것이 궁금합니다.
It's more complex than that, really. Because although I took over being head writer for Series 5, I'd been a single episode writer up until that point. So Russell and I worked together for quite a long while. There's always been an overall story arc in Doctor Who. We played it up a lot for Season 6, but there's always been a story arc. When I decided to resolve the story of River Song, a character in fact introduced during Russell's time, that obviously became more complex because we were seeing her story backwards. But how much do I know? I knew roughly what I wanted to do for Matt Smith's last episode when I was writing his first one. Because as you know, as you've seen, his very first episode is a consequence of his last one. But you know, quite a lot of it you're making up as you go along. The big shapes are there.
네. 또 손을 들어주시면은, 네, 저기 가운데 뒤쪽에서 손을 드신 것 같은데요.
먼저 만나뵈서 반갑습니다. 저는 셜록의 팬인데요. 셜록에 있는 에피소드들이 전부 다 재미있었는데 아까 선생님께서 얘기하셨듯이 첫 페이지가 되게 중요하고 또 그 페이지를 통해서 다음 페이지로 넘어가는 게 중요하다고 하셨는데 그 셜록의 첫 시즌의 첫 에피소드에 있는 첫 사건을 어떻게 그 사건으로 정하셨고 그게 어떤 식으로 이제 그 쇼러너들이 당신도 쇼러너겠지만 그 피칭이 됐었는지가 좀 궁금하고요. 그 다음 그러니까 사건들을 고르신 순서나 아니면 중요도에 대해서 좀 알려주시면 좋을 것 같습니다.
Right. In that case, you've got to imagine where the audience or the script reader who hates you is. Right? They know it's going to be Sherlock Holmes. So, the very first thing we showed them is the last thing they expected to see. Footage of a recent war. So if you're thinking, oh, it's that Sherlock Holmes thing, now you're thinking, oh, what? What? How can that be Sherlock Holmes? So that's the first thing. It was to grab you in that way and say, this is something quite different from what you were expecting. Because remember, most of the audience have only glanced at the newspaper. They've only got a vague idea what they're going to see. I think that bought us 5 minutes. 5 minutes of, what? This is a bit odd. I'm going to wait and see if this actually is Sherlock Holmes. And then thereafter, there was the interesting murders. We had people dying in an interesting way. And then we had, I figured we had a sort of countdown. Given that we've told the audience this is modern day Sherlock Holmes, I thought we had them in our back pocket up until they would wait to see what Sherlock Holmes was like. So we delayed his appearance. We lured them on, saying, we haven't shown you him yet. We deliberately delayed his first appearance because I thought they would hang around long enough for that. And from that point on, we had to deliver a terrific Sherlock Holmes. So we were very proud of the first reveal of the body bag opening up on what was then the completely unfamiliar face of Benedict Cumberbatch. And then we had him taking a riding crop to a corpse, which is quite a radical thing to have for your BBC One hero. At the same time, again, was lifted from the original story. That's how he's first encountered in the original story. But I thought that would buy us a few more minutes. And then we had him make a whole set of deductions about Dr. Watson. And critically, didn't explain how he'd done it. So I figured, all right, they're going to have to hang around for a few more minutes after that. So at each point, I was sort of looking at where the hook was that would keep you going a bit longer. And hopefully, by the time they're driving out to the crime scene and he's explaining how he did all these deductions from the phone, you'd be thinking, actually, this is maybe quite good. I'll maybe not go to the pub. I'll maybe sit and watch this. And then there's a whole lot more deductions about the Pink Lady. And hopefully, well, history says we got it right. People stuck around. But that was the pattern for that.
네, 또 손을 들어서 표시해 주시면은 마이크를 드리겠습니다. 네, 오른쪽 뒤편에 있습니다.
네, 만나뵙게 돼서 영광입니다. 저는 지극히 스티븐 모펫의 개인적인 질문을 좀 드리고 싶은데요. 작가의 세계관이나 작품 간 독창성은 선천적인 선천성과 그리고 후천적인 영향이 크게 좌우된다고 생각하는데요. 후천적으로 작품의 필력이 될 수 있었던 작가 자신의 인생 일대에 있어서 가장 불행과 가장 행복한 사건은 어떤 것이 있었는지 거기에 대해서 궁금합니다.
I haven't really had terribly big tragedies, I'm very glad to say. I've lost grandparents and so on, but they were very old, so they did quite well. Happy moments, well, meeting my wife. But I don't know how much either end of that became what I wrote about. I think when I was writing about my own life, which I used to more, I was more obsessed with the trivia of my life than with the big shapes of it, with the things that happen to you every day, not the things that happen to you occasionally, happen to you very rarely. That life is composed of a very small number of big events, which are quite easy to write about, and an incredible number of very small events. And I quite like writing about the trivia, which I did when I was writing sitcoms. What was the first part of that question? It was... Sorry.
작가의 작품성이나 세계관을 운운할 때 선천적으로 타고난 천성, 본인이 생각하는 천성은 나는 작가로서 어떤 성향을 가지고 있다. 그리고 후천적으로는 이제 환경적으로 영향을 미쳤던 방금 말씀을 해주셨는데요. 인생의 생애에 있어서 가장 비극적인 사건과 그리고 행복한 사건, 천성적인 나에 대해서 먼저 말씀해 주시면 될 것 같아요.
I think to be honest, and this is probably a slightly boring answer, I just think I'm phenomenally lucky. I do, because I get to write the shows I love and other people love them too. That's a rather boring answer, but it's the truth. Philosophy, I think being clever and kind is a good thing, but I'm sounding so dull here. I don't think I've got a big grandstanding philosophy of life. I think that's why I write comedies and light dramas. I'm sorry, I think I'm being a bit disappointing here, but I think I just like telling a good yarn. I think I'm a man who lacks depth. Sorry.
네, 앞쪽에 마이크 전달해 주시면 좋겠습니다.
닥터 셜록 전부 좋아하는 팬이고요. 처음에 닥터가 나왔을 때 한국에서 이게 통할 수 있을까 생각했었는데 그 의외로 많은 사람들이 좋아했고 이래서 영국적인 게 한국에서도 통하는구나 이런 생각을 했었는데요. 그 처음에 왜 러셀이 이제 총책임자였고 제가 알기로는 이제 그 대본을 몇 개 쓰셨었는데 그때 이제 러셀이 거의 그 모펫이 쓰신 대본은 손을 대지 않았다고 그렇게 들었거든요. 그런데 이제 지금은 이제 본인이 이제 그 헤드라이터가 되셨잖아요. 그러면 이제 다른 사람들이 써온 대본을 어느 정도까지 개입을 하시는지, 뭐 많이 고치시는지 뭐 그런 게 궁금합니다.
It does happen, yes. Yes, that's part of the job, is making sure that all the scripts that go across your desk are in good shape. So yes, I've done a lot of that. Just the same as Russell did, really. That's what being a head writer is. I mean, I'm not desperate to do it. I don't do it for fun. I do it because I need to do it. But yeah, there's a lot of rewriting in Doctor Who. There's a lot of stuff that's gone out under other people's names that I've actually written. That's quite common. But yeah, that's the case throughout television. Throughout television, that's the case. But you know, there's writers I don't touch. I've never had to. So, you know, Chris Chibnall, Toby Whithouse, Mark Gatiss. I mean, I don't have to work on their scripts, except in the normal way of chatting back and forth with them and discussing the plot lines. So, you know, it's just part of the process. It's a factory, a television show. You need the scripts ready when they need to be ready, and sometimes that means I have to take over. Nobody so far has hated me when I've done it to them. So, there you go.
네. 예. 앞쪽에 아까부터 손을 들고 계셔서. 아이고, 마이크가 절로 갔네요. 다음번에 기회 드리겠습니다.
안녕하세요. 저는 질문을 딱 두 가지 드리고 싶은데요. 셜록 시즌2의 마지막에 셜록이 다시 살아난 과정에 대해서 전 세계의 사람들이 많은 추측을 했었는데, 그 모페 씨가 그런 거를 주위에서 많이 들었을 거라고 생각이 되는데, 들었던 추측 중에서 제일 재밌고 황당한 추측이 뭐였는지 궁금하고요. 이거는 좀 닥터 후 팬으로서의 질문인데 시즌 7에서 에이미와 로리가 이제 우는 천사 위핑 엔젤에게 그런 마지막을 맞이했는데 그 에이미와 로리에게 그런 마지막을 위핑 엔젤에게 맡긴 그런 의도가 있었는지 그게 궁금합니다. 그리고 이거는 사심이 담긴 발언인데요. 가실 때 저한테 사인 좀 해주시고 가셨으면 좋겠습니다.
I'm sure you can. What was the first one? It was season 2. What was the most interesting theory? Well, you know, we very quickly stopped looking because we didn't want to be influenced. There were some brilliantly complicated ones. Mark's favourite was one that went on for several pages and was far more sort of rigorous and detailed than the one we eventually put on air. But it would have taken most of the episode to explain it. So that was a good one. Another one I heard about after our show had gone out was that the much simpler one, that he just, he said, someone theorized he just fell well. He just did it. He just arranged with his cleverness to be terribly injured, but not die. He said it's technically possible you could work that out. So there you go. I thought that was quite fun. Why were Amy and Rory taken by a weeping angel? Well, some Doctor Who monster had to off them. I think I asked Karen and Arthur, what monster do you want to take you out the show? And they were both very keen on the weeping angel. So that one, you know. Someone's got to kill you in Doctor Who. And that was it. That was the questions, wasn't it? Loved the weeping angels. I think probably because they were my companions, I killed them with one of my monsters.
네. 맨 앞줄에 아까부터
안녕하세요. 만나게 뵙게 돼서 되게 영광이고요. 크리스마스 에피나 이제 고흐 에피 같은 경우 영상의 이미지가 되게 굉장히 이쁜데요. 이제 각본을 쓰거나 이제 다른 작가들이 만든 각본들을 볼 때 이미지를 먼저 생각을 한다거나 아니면 단지 그 이미지들이 이제 각본의 스토리 흐름을 위해서 이제 그렇게 만든 것인지 그게 궁금하고요. 이제 또 모페 씨의 이제 가장 무슨 극을 쓰든 간에 이제 가장 영향을 받은 영상 또는 이제 글이 따로 있는지 이게 궁금합니다.
I think the visuals come very early. I mean, that's part of the storytelling. You're not writing radio, and so you're not just writing dialogue. You want those pictures up front and central right at the beginning. So probably particularly with Doctor Who, I'm thinking of what the monster will look like and what the planet will look like and what the spaceships will look like. That changes. That changes when designers come on and directors come on and they're much cleverer than me and improve on the idea hugely. But I do start. You are writing to promote great visuals. One of the weird things about Doctor Who is the audience is so large now internationally that most of the audience can't speak English. So the pictures better be good, really. And the second one was about what
influenced?
Yeah, loads of things have over the years. I'll name 2 movies. Love The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, the Billy Wilder Sherlock Holmes film. That was a big influence on me and Mark Gatiss making Sherlock. And I love the film The Princess Bride. I think William Goldman's storytelling is the absolute model of what I was talking about earlier.
You know, he just keeps you turning those pages, keeps you moving through that movie with such economy and grace. So those two, there's a lot of stellar storytelling in those two. Go and watch those. See where I nicked all the jokes.
네, 또 손 들어주시면 마이크 전달해드리겠습니다. 가운데 뒤쪽에 손 드신 분 있네요.
안녕하세요.
Hello.
저는 아까도 그랬지만 사실 닥터 후는 뭔지 모르겠고요. 셜록을 시즌 2인가까지 봤는데 그냥 너무 재밌어서 보긴 했습니다. 근데 다음 시즌을 봐야겠다는 생각은 들지 않더라고요. 왜냐면은 그냥 진짜 너무 재밌게 봤는데 결국은 저 같은 사람이 많을 것 같은데. 어쨌든 근데 왜 그랬냐면 저한테 사실 그건 허구기 때문에 허구극을 창작하시는 분이잖아요. 그러니까 그게 예술의 일환인 건 알겠지만 저한테는 크게 의미로 다가오지 않았거든요. 왜냐면 예를 들면 제가 요즘 잘 보는 드라마는 정도전이라는 드라마가 있는데 왜냐면 그게 저는 사회적으로 많은 의미가 있고 저한테 개인적으로 좀 마음을 울리는 의미가 있다고 생각을 해서 재밌게 보고 있지만 물론 셜록도 굉장히 재밌었어요. 근데 본인이 이렇게 자아 실현을 하신 거잖아요. 나는 꿈이 있었고 그걸 이루기 위해서 이런 일들을 선택했고 하고 계신데 그 이외에 정말 한 줄 한 줄 읽어가면서 다음 줄을 계속 포기하지 못하게 하는 그런 매력 이외에 책을 덮고 나서 그 책을 읽은 사람에게 재밌다 이외에 어떤 의미로 궁극적인 의미로 담고 싶은 게 그런 담고 싶은 목표가 있으신지 궁금합니다.
Yes, I want to make it more like Korean history. Season 3 is very good. You'll find out how he survived. I'm not sure how much more of a cliffhanger we could have put on that. Okay, is there an overarching theme? I don't think there is, really, in all honesty. I think there is, I suppose in the case of Sherlock, it's about good friendship and brilliant intelligence. It's sweet reason and good friends is what I keep calling it. So you've got the two halves of a great human being in a way, and that is a great brain and a great heart. And the great heart of John Watson and the great brain of Sherlock Holmes meet and become a perfect unit. They save each other. So I suppose it's that. I suppose friendship always moves me. And if there was one thing in Sherlock that moves me more than anything else, I don't think the mysteries are that difficult. I don't think it's really about adventure. I think it is a platform on which to talk about truly great friendship. That would be the closest I could come to a theme. Beat that, Korean history.
네. 계속해서 질문 받겠습니다. 네. 가운데 줄에 손을 높이 들어주시면 좀 더 잘 보일 것 같아요. 여기서 잘 안 보이거든요.
안녕하세요.
Hello.
저 부산에서 올라와가지고 되게 지금 떨리는데 만나 뵙게서 되게 영광스럽습니다. 제가 질문드리고 싶은
Where's
것은
Busan?
It takes about 5 hours from here.
We win. We came from the UK. I have come. I came much further to meet you. Sorry.
질문 드릴게요. 닥터를 보면 미래랑 현재랑 과거를 이렇게 넘나들잖아요. 근데 이제 그 어느 시대가 더 좋은지 그거랑 그리고 마크 게티스 작가님 한 번도 이제 의견 충돌이 없었다고 들었는데 셜록에서도 배우로서의 마크 게티스의 작가님의 연기를 어떻게 생각하는지 그 시즌 3에는 이제 운동하는 러닝머신 그런 장면도 있었는데 어떻게 생각하는지 궁금합니다.
Well, first of all, I think Martin Gatiss is a brilliant actor. He's very strict with himself. He wouldn't put himself in Sherlock if he didn't think he was good enough. And my God, he's good enough. He's one of the finest actors in the country. And it's a remarkable thing about Mark. He's one of the best writers and one of the best actors completely separately. That is a really annoying level of talent. As for the scene on the treadmill, he actually wrote that bit in. That was him. He put himself on the treadmill. And then tried all sorts of reasons to get the scene cut. I don't think he liked it. I think... And then when we showed the episode, that episode in front of an audience, and he pulled up his top to look at his tummy, he got such whoops from all the girls in the audience. I've never seen him blush like it. It was hilarious. What time and place do I like best? I think I'd be rubbish with the time machine because I'm terribly happy. I like it now. I like it here. I'd get in the time machine and travel to exactly here. But if I did have access to a TARDIS, I think I'd go to the future. But I'd be very specific with the Doctor that I wanted to go to a very safe part of the future where there were no invasions or killer robots. And I'd just peek out the doors. But thank you for coming such a long way.
네, 또 손을 들어주시면 네, 맨 앞쪽에 마이크 전달해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 다른 분들이 저도 셜록 팬인데요. 다른 분들이 셜록 팬으로서 질문 많이 해주신 것 같아서 저는 작가 지망생으로 질문 드리고 싶은 게 그 소설이 너무 재밌어서 그거를 지금 세대한테 재밌는 부분을 재창조하고 싶어서 시나리오를 쓰셨다고 하셨는데 그러면 따로 시나리오 작법에 대해서 공부를 하신 적은 없는지 만약에 그리고 시나리오를 다른 시나리오 작품을 분석을 해본 적이 없는지 좀 궁금하고요. 있다면 어떤 작품인지 알고 싶습니다. 그리고 또 제가 이거 한국인이니까 한국인으로 궁금한 점 있는데 한국이라는 나라에 대해서 그 전에 어떻게 생각하셨는지 조금 궁금하고요. 그리고 와 보시니까 어떤지 좀 알고 싶습니다. 감사합니다.
Do I study other screenplays? I think study is probably the wrong word. I just like watching things. I think, as I was trying to say earlier, watch and notice why you like something, watch and notice why you enjoy it. Studying a screenplay or writing always just seems to take all the joy out of it. The mere process of studying it would stop you seeing the only thing that's worthwhile about it, which is that it is enjoyable. I think it's important to enjoy the media that you're writing in. If you want to write books, read a lot of books. That's what Stephen King says. If you want to write books, read books and enjoy them. Understand that you enjoy them and occasionally pause to think, why was that so good? But I think it's terrible to deconstruct something into a whole set of facts and figures because you'll never work out the important thing that way. Korea. I've never been to Korea before, ever. My impressions of Korea so far, because I only arrived yesterday, is that it largely seems to be some kind of digital conference. So I've been mostly here. But I think I feel that you're also courteous and polite. That I've decided that we should take back to the UK your little bow. I think that's lovely that you always bow, and I think that's I can't do it properly. I feel so clumsy, But it's so nice and it's so kind, and I just wish we did that as well. I'm sure we'd be a much more polite and kindly nation if we did. And I've noticed that because I've been here with you lot, that I'm behaving much better. I'm not swearing or making rude jokes, which I normally do. I'm just thinking, oh, they're all a bit polite and kind here. I better sort of pull myself together a bit. So that's my impression. A very, very positive impression. I like it very much. And I like the food too.
네, 또 손을 들어서 예, 이쪽에 앞쪽에 손을 좀 오래 들고 계셔야지 잘 보입니다. 네, 마이크.
제가 셜록에 대해서는요, 아까 남학생이 얘기했던 그 부분을 조금 공감을 하는 것이, 셜록을 맨 처음에 이렇게 접했던 게 시즌 1을 제가 영상 번역을 하면서 그 스토리를 이렇게 공부를 하면서 보게 됐는데, 사실 그 스토리 자체가 그렇게 확 매력적이다 이런 느낌은 안 들었지만, 그래도 개인적으로 끝까지 봤던 거는 어떤 그 주인공에 대한 매력? 베네딕트 컴버배치 그 사람이 굉장히 이렇게 볼수록 매력이더라고요. 그래서 시즌이 사실 재밌는 시즌도 있고 재미없는 시즌도 있고 그랬었거든요. 그랬는데 그걸 보면서 느꼈던 게, 만약에 그 주인공을 그 베네딕트 그 배우가 안 했더라 하더라도 그 스토리의 힘만으로 지금 이런 전 세계적인 인기를 구가할 수 있었을까 하는 그런 자신감이 있으신지 그거 알고 싶습니다.
Well, great that you like Benedict so much. I'm getting that impression. Sherlock Holmes has been a hit for, how, 110 years? I mean, there have been something like 200 versions of it. So yes, I'm confident that Sherlock Holmes can be great without Benedict. But that doesn't mean it would be great for you. If it's not something that you like, and your enthusiasm is for Benedict, maybe you would only like that version of it. But yes, I'm absolutely confident that Sherlock Holmes would be fantastic without Benedict, without Martin, without me, without Sue, without Mark, because it always has been. It may be that the Benedict version is the only one that you like. But that's, you know, there is some evidence to support the idea that none of us are indispensable.
네. 뒤쪽에 손을 드신 분이 있으신가요? 잘 안 보여서. 아, 여기 앞에도 있군요. 네, 특히 뒤쪽에 계신 분들은 손을 높이 오래 들고 계셔야지 제가 보입니다.
저 우선 이 위대한 이야기를 시작해 주셔서 정말 너무 감사하는 마음을 전하고 싶고요. 지금 시즌 3가 끝났는데 이거는 어느 정도 지났는지 총 생각하시는 총 어떤 시즌이 있으실 거잖아요. 거기서 지금 이거는 몇 분의 몇 정도 온 이야기인지 보는 사람 입장에서 마음의 준비를 할 수 있게 해주셨으면 좋겠고, 그리고 한 시즌을 끝내실 때마다 뭔가 그러니까 쓰시기도 하고 제작을 하시는 분으로서 뭔가 창작하시는 분으로서 하나를 끝냈을 때 그 이전과 자신의 세계가 달라지던지 그게 되게 궁금하고, 그리고 혹시 어떤 맥주 좋아하시는지, 이건 개인 팬으로서 좀 제가 시즌 4도 앞으로 뭐 나올 때까지 계속 볼 것 같은데, 그 한 시즌 끝날 때마다 맥주를 마시면서 저희가 같이 한다는 마음을 느끼고 싶거든요.
Right. How long is it going to go on for? Well, that is probably not down to me. That is probably down to how long Benedict and Martin want to do it. We are still tremendously enthusiastic about making it. So are they. So it'll probably go on for a bit. I hope it will. I'm very keen on doing it. But you can just hit the moment in your life and you think, I don't want to do that anymore. That does happen. It's not an ambiguous feeling when it happens. It's pretty clear that you're done with something. But you know, I think they could go for a good time yet. I hate to disappoint you, but I almost never drink beer. I'm more of a red wine man myself. I like Saint-Emilion, a good Merlot, if you really want to be drinking with me.
네, 또 손을 들어주시면은 네, 가운데 쪽에 뒤쪽에 예.
예, 안녕하세요. 저는 셜록을 아주 재밌게 봤는데요. 두 가지 질문이 있어요. 첫 번째는 셜록 홈즈를 이제 현대 버전으로 가져왔기 때문에 이제 창조를 해야 되는 부분도 있었는데, 뭐 예를 들면 핸드폰을 어떤 핸드폰을 쓴다든지, 뭐 시계를 어떤 시계를 차는지, 뭐 구두는 어떤 구두를 신는지, 그런 점들을 굉장히 유념해서 보게 되더라고요. 그래서 간접 광고도 될 수 있을 것 같은데 뭐 돈을 되게 많이 주고 뭐 삼성에서 갤럭시를 쓰라고 한다거나 했던 오퍼가 있었는지, 아니면 실제로도 그렇게 뭐 좀 PPL로 활용하기도 하는지, 그런 것도 궁금하고요. 그리고 또 두 번째 질문은 셜록을 이제 우리나라 케이블 채널에서
We don't ever do that. Can I just get that in very quickly?
Okay.
We don't ever place things in as adverts, and we frequently take the logos out. So no, not on the BBC. Carry on with your next bit.
네, 그리고 또 두 번째 질문은 그 셜록을 한국 케이블 채널에서 수입해 오면서 예고편을 만들 때 이렇게 뭐 셜록 홈즈와 뭐 왓슨 박사와 이렇게 좀 우정보다도 훨씬 더 깊은 관계인 것처럼 이렇게 좀 이렇게 끈적끈적한 음악을 깔면서 예고편을 만들고 했었는데, 뭐 실제로 많은 팬들이 그런 뭐 영상도 만들고 뭐 그림도 그리고 하잖아요. 그런 점들에 대해서 어떻게 생각을 하는지와 또 그런 것들을 좀 마케팅이나 이런 쪽에 활용을 하려고 하는지, 좀 유념해서 만드는지도 궁금합니다.
Well, no. No, we haven't. But look, it's absolutely fine for people to watch a show. I mean, we make the show for you. We don't watch it for you. So whatever you want to imagine is fine. Absolutely not is that in what we write. In fact, the opposite is stated absolutely expressly in the show. Sherlock Holmes isn't interested in sex at all, and John Watson is very interested in sex with women. So the two of them having a sexual relationship with each other would cause some embarrassingly long pauses, wouldn't it? Sherlock wouldn't want to do it at all, and John would want to do it with a lady. What a rubbish night that would be. But knock yourself out, enjoy yourselves, whatever. But that's not the way Doyle wrote it, and it's not the way we're writing it. But as I say, the world would be a dull place without fantasies in it. I may have watched two women detectives and imagined the same thing. I've just never bothered to write to the makers of the show and ask them to write that scene in.
네. 가운데 줄에 흰 옷 입으신 분이 손을 드셨네요.
Interesting that, I'll just take it on. Interesting that you say deeper relationship. You mean sexual relationship. That's not a deeper relationship. Friendship, the relationship with Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson is a very deep relationship. They definitely love each other. They just don't find each other attractive. That's not a necessary condition of a deep relationship. Anyway, sorry.
안녕하세요. 그 ITV에서도 일을 하셨고 BBC에서도 일을 하셨는데요. 두 방송사 간의 차이점이 있는지 이런 게 좀 궁금해요. 더군다나 BBC는 뭐 현재로서는 지구상에 존재하는 최고의 공영방송이라고 할 수 있는데, 방금 광고 얘기도 하셨는데요. BBC에서 일한다는 게 어떤 건지, 정말 뭐 어떤 장점들이 있는지, 혹은 뭐 실제로 들어가 보니 그렇지 않더라, 이런 면도 있는지 궁금합니다.
Well, in most of the time I've worked for independent companies for the BBC or for ITV, so I haven't worked with that directly. Having said that, Doctor Who is made directly for the BBC. Sherlock is made by Hartswood Films, our company, for the BBC. I think the BBC is a wonderful place. It's an absolutely amazing institution, an extraordinary broadcaster, a celebration of quality for itself. So I'm a very, very big fan of the BBC and very, very loyal to it. It's obviously, it's a real place composed of real people, so it's not fairyland and everything doesn't go the way you want it to. But I would entirely endorse the view that it is the greatest broadcaster in the world, and it is a privilege to be a very, very, very small and occasional part of it.
네, 맨 앞줄에 이쪽에 마이크 부탁드립니다.
사실 한국에서는 영국 드라마보다는 이제 미국 드라마가 훨씬 더 대중되어 있었는데, 대중화되어 있었는데, 셜록의 성공으로 사람들도 많이 영국 드라마에 대해서 관심을 가지게 된 것 같습니다. 그래서 본인 외에 같은 극작가로서 추천해 주실 만한 재능 있는 다른 극작가가 있으신가요? 영국 극작가. 예를 들면은 블랙미러의 찰리 브로커 같은 극작가는 어떻게 생각하시는지 알고 싶고요. 마지막으로 마크에게 사이코 빌리지 너무 재밌었다고 전해주세요. 또 파트너와 예쁜 사랑 하시라는 말씀도 꼭 한번 전해주시기를 부탁드립니다.
Well, Mark didn't write that, of course, but yeah, I will pass that on. Well, Charlie Brooker's great. Jed Mercurio, who wrote Line of Duty recently, is a fantastic screenwriter and a friend of mine, I should say. Chris Chibnall, who's written some Doctor Who's, has recently branched out on his own and done a brilliant and incredibly successful series called Broadchurch, which was huge, which if you like British drama, you'll love that. That's wonderful. Big fan of Toby Whithouse, who writes Doctor Who's, and a wonderful series called Being Human. He's got a new show coming out shortly. Oh, there's a lot of good British screenwriters out there. I'm looking at my wife to try and remind me. But those are the ones I'll mention for now. Look out for Line of Duty. That's tremendous, I think.
네, 시간이 많이 남지 않았습니다. 마지막으로 몇 분만 더 질문을 받도록 하겠습니다. 손을 들어서 표해 주시면은 가운데 줄에 검은 옷 입으신 분. 네.
저 셜록에서 그러면 많은 에피소드 중에서 드라마 시리즈로 선택할 때 가장 중점적으로 보는 요인이 뭔가요?
Do you mean choose an episode? Choose what? I'm not quite sure of the question. Could we have another go at that one? Sorry.
그러니까 원작 셜록 홈즈를 좋아하셔서 그거를 TV로 다시 만드시는데 거기서 이제 에피소드를 몇 개를 선택하셔서 만드시는 거잖아요. 네네네.
Yeah, I've got it now, thanks, and very good question. Well, at the beginning of Sherlock, one of the things we wanted to do was, well, everybody knows there's going to be a Moriarty, everyone knows there's going to be a Hound of the Baskervilles and an Irene Adler, so we thought, let's do them all up front. Let's do the big ingredients of the show right up front, not make people wait for it. But now we're in the sort of fun phase of the show, where we can we are looking almost specifically for bits of the original that nobody knows about, elements to the character that nobody knows about, more obscure villains. Charles Augustus Magnuson in the third series is based on Charles Augustus Milverton, who's a brilliant villain in the original. that is reasonably well known, but most people haven't heard of. There's another terrific villain that we're going to use in Series 4, an absolutely sensational villain from the original series of stories. And we're not going to tell you who that is.
네. 손 들어주시면은 마이크 갖다 드리겠습니다. 한 2분 정도만 질문을 마지막으로 더 받으면 될 것 같은데요. 네.
There's one there.
앞쪽에 있습니다. 여기 가운데 줄에요.
아까도 질문 드려서 질문 안 드리려고 참고 있었는데 죄송합니다. 2가지 여쭤보고 싶은데요. 첫 번째는 닥터 후에 캡틴 잭 하크니스가 이제는 더 이상 나오지 않는지. 그리고 두 번째로는 지금 셜록이랑 닥터 후 2가지 쇼를 하느라고 정말 바쁘신 걸로 알고 있지만 혹시 앞으로 다른 쇼를 하고 싶다거나 이런 소재를 꼭 써보고 싶다는 그런 게 있으신지. 네.
Not sure about Captain Jack, could happen, but all these things are driven by the story. Have we got a good story for it? I actually wrote the very first Captain Jack story, so I like the character. But the point is, you can't keep making an old show like Doctor Who feel like a sequel. Every time you bring something back, it can start to feel as though you're saying that the past was better. It's good to introduce new things. But if we had a great story, we would. Just don't ever want to turn the show, particularly an elderly show, it's in its 51st year. We don't want people to start thinking it's a nostalgia fest. I want the kids to think it's a brand new series and it belongs to them, says the man who brought all the Doctors back for Day of the Doctor. But that was a special occasion. And what was the other question? It was... I've forgotten. Oh no, I'm getting old. I've literally blanked on with the second question. Right. I've got 1 or 2 ideas kicking around, but I'm nowhere close to having enough time right now, since we've just been working out when the next series of Doctor Who will shoot, and the next, we're looking at the possible dates for Sherlock. I can't look at a calendar without bursting into tears, so... No, I'll get to it, but something has to give first. Me in a wooden box.
네. 한 분만 더 받을까요? 질문? 네. 손 드신 건가요? 예, 맨 앞줄에.
Make it a good question. No pressure.
뭐였지? 만약에 베네딕트하고 걔가 맞습니다. 바빠가지고 시즌 4를 못 찍을 것 같다. 그러면은 시즌 3에서 끝나는 건지 아니면은 다른 분을 캐스팅할 생각이 있으신 건지 아니면 생각이 있으면 누구를 캐스팅하실 건지 하고요. 한국에서 베네딕트 컴버배치의 별명이 잘생김을 연기하는 배우인데 실제로 보면 잘생겼는지 훌륭한 질문 아니어서 죄송해요.
Look, we're going to make a 4th series. I don't know how we persuade you that that is true, but we are. I'll write it on my face just in case you don't get it. Really, we are. We are not going to recast Benedict or Martin. We just couldn't. That version of Sherlock Holmes is based around those 2 performances. If they didn't want to do it, we would stop. And there would be, I have no doubt, another Sherlock Holmes, another actress playing the part. But as far as our version is concerned, I think we just couldn't contemplate it. I also would stop if Mark Gatiss didn't want to write it anymore, or Sue didn't want to produce it. There's a bunch of us that are the show, and we're not going to continue with that. But we are going to make more. I promise. I promise it's coming. And my failing memory has done it to me again. What was the second one?
저도 까먹었네요.
아,
잘생김을 연기하는.
Is Bennett? Well, not to me. Okay, I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth. Here it is. Benedict's fairly handsome. But if you want every woman and quite a lot of men flopping around the place, breathless, forget Benedict. Benedict will disappear. He will fade into the wallpaper if Rupert Graves walks past. Lestrade is in person the sex god of Sherlock, no question. And we all stand there, including Benedict, saying, how can he do that just by smiling? So, that's the truth. If Benedict and Rupert were sitting up here, much as you might want to think it's Benedict you're looking at, Benedict would be the first to say, it's going to be Rupert. There you go. Best answer I can think.
우리 작가협회장님께서 손을 드셔서 어떤 말씀이 있으신지.
마지막일 것 같아서 제가 마이크를 잡았습니다. 멀리서 오셔서 일정도 복잡하신데 오늘 굉장히 좋은 강연 해주셔서 감사합니다. 긴 시간 동안 정말 애쓰셨습니다. 수고하셨습니다. 세계적으로 국제적으로 유명한 작가님도 이 쓴다는 작업이 얼마나 외롭고 또 험난하고 거기에다가 얼마나 공포스럽고 무서운지 그런 말씀을 해주셨을 때 굉장히 위로가 됐습니다. 동료로서요. 위로가 됐고요. 한국의 드라마가 지금 아시아를 넘어서 또 중동 또 멀리 있는 미국에 또 남아메리카까지 지금 굉장히 많이 알려져 있습니다. 영국에서는 아마 한국 드라마가 방영이 안 되었겠죠. 한국 드라마들이
I don't believe so, no. We don't have a huge number of imports really in Britain, partly because we've got a lot of home product. We've started watching recently sort of Scandinavian dramas, so we're starting to get used to the idea of reading subtitles. The trouble with English as your first language is you very often don't bother with all the others because it's such a useful one and so many people speak it. And it's a shame for us, it's bad, we should be better. But we are not as acclimatized and used to the idea of subtitles and dubbing as the non-English speaking nations, so it's more of a difficulty. But it will happen as the world expands. Which series should we be looking out for from Korea?
최근에 아주 굉장히 많은 한국 드라마들이 세계인들 특히 외국 사람들한테 또 사극까지도 굉장히 흥미롭게 보여진다고 들었습니다. 가능하면 한국의 최근 작품들과 그다음에 세계적으로 유명한 작품들을 모페 선생님께서도 좀 봐주셨으면 하는 바람이고요. 관심을 좀 가져주셨으면 하는 바람입니다. 감사합니다.
Alright, I will do.
예. 아마 방송 협회장님이시다 보니까 특정 어떤 한두 작품을 꼽기가 부담스럽지 않으셨을까라는 생각을 합니다. 마지막으로 스티븐 모페 씨가 한국의 방송 작가 그리고 작가 지망생 또 팬들에게 한 말씀 짧게 해주시면 좋겠습니다.
Well, I don't know if I've got any words left, but it's the best job in the world. Let's never ever forget that it really, really is the best job in the world. And getting to do it at all, impresses me and gives me joy on a daily basis. And I hope the same is true and will be true for all of you. Thank you.
네, 오늘 먼저 와주셔서 감사합니다. 고맙습니다. Thank you. 네, 스티븐 모페 씨께 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.